As most of you watching probably know, the Panarmian Civil War was a devastating conflict, but after the Treaty of Swania, it was clear that one side was far better off than the other. The Nationalists, now known as the Grand Nuciferan Republic, had the backing of several major nations and as a result had an effective war budget of around $1.5 million. The Loyalists, on the other hand, had no major allies and they were mostly self-funded, which as a result gave them an effective war budget of around $400,000. Despite this, we still won, and the war ended soon after. However, the Nuciferan economy was booming after the war, and the Panarmian Loyalists, who had just spent all of their money in defense of their beloved nation, found themselves with nearly nothing to sustain themselves. And this is one of the key factors that led to the Great Economic Collapse. The Great Economic Collapse is something Panarmia still struggles with heavily to this day, and it was caused entirely by the Civil War. Panarmia might have won the Civil War, but it had spent every last dime in the war budget in doing so. The war funding wasn't just money laid aside for any potential wars, it was anything from personal bank accounts to emergency stashes, and as you can imagine, using any of that was detrimental to the nation. And an economic collapse followed immediately post-war. Sensing that economic collapse, and not internal conflict, could be the death of my nation, I hastily grinded out around $10,000, which was enough to keep the country afloat. It was not, however, enough to fund anything external. The military, build projects, and recruiting would all have to wait as I tried to repair my nation from the damage of the Civil War. And one nation seized the opportunity. It was the Nuciferans. Why not? Panarmia was still economically shattered, its military was in shambles, and war damage was still incredibly visible within their city. But what they did next would turn out to be their greatest mistake. The Nuciferans seized the opportunity, and using the excuse that the Panarmian government had recently denied them water trade, they attacked and attempted to raid Eagle Point. However, the Panarmian defenses were steadfast and the Nuciferan assault was repelled. This was the first battle in what would later be known as the Water Wars. After the battle, once we had reorganized, I ordered a daring assault on the enemy capital of Swania. The Nuciferans saw this coming and had stationed multiple soldiers around the city to ward off any Panarmian attacks. But the following could barely even be considered a battle, and is considered one of the most tragic episodes in the Water Wars. The defending Nuciferan forces were cut down, and what is now known as the Swanian Massacre. The Nuciferans call it an atrocity, as many civilians were killed, but the Panarmians say it was a justifiable act of self-defense, as many of those civilians had taken up arms beside their militia. Still, many unarmed innocents were caught up in the crossfire. After the Swanian Massacre, the Nuciferans were furious, and quickly set about planning a counterattack for revenge. And a few days later, along with their allies, they stormed Eagle Point when less than a quarter of the Panarmian military was online. Their revenge, however, would not come from this battle, as the small Panarmian forces rallied and successfully held their own, ending the battle in a draw. That is the latest battle in this conflict, and as of the recording of this video, the Water Wars is still ongoing with no end in sight. So originally this was not planned on being in the main video because, well, it just happened recently, like 2 days ago, but I believe it's relevant. So there's this stoneworks nation called Landrian, and pretty much a couple days ago they were making absurd threats saying our nation would stop existing in a week, and they even tried to raid us, but they were promptly driven off by the militia. Keep in mind, Landria is an artificial island nation, and I really didn't think they could pose any threat to Panarmia. But then, about like a day or so ago, they unified a bunch of other nations, which are also presumably artificial islands, into the Confederation of Landrian. And as of me saying this, August 4th, 2026, Panarmian has not shown any form of aggression, or well, any form of literally anything, towards Panarmian, leading me to believe that they've decided to resolve the conflict without any further assaults. The situation is still developing and still ongoing, and I'll probably make more videos on it based on where it goes. Anyway, that'll do it for today's video. This is KGBucks99 signing off, and I'll see ya in the next one.